Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. Episode 118, Part A. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge on the CGS forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin. On this episode, Jim and I are joined by Matt Kramer, Darth Kramer of the forums, and of course the host of the Shades Journal podcast, as we begin part one of a two-part discussion that is going to be about Legion of the Superheroes and Eye for an Eye, our book of the month from In Stock Trades. The reason why we're releasing this as a two-parter is, first of all, I'm in my report card week, and I'm trying to get an episode out to you on Sunday night, which is our normal release night. But also what I'm finding is with some of these 3 and 4 hour shows that we've been doing right now, it's just the editing time that I'm putting in. I'm staying up and putting in 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. mornings to try and get the show out, and it's starting to kill me. So because of that, what I decided to do is, especially when we start getting into like the 4-hour mark for an episode, is I'm going to split it up between Sunday and Thursday. I don't necessarily mean that we're going to do this every single week, but this is just kind of a way to ease things up a bit. So this episode is going to be about 2 hours long, and then the second part is going to be released on Thursday to finish off this discussion. So we're going to be doing like kind of a Sunday-Thursday release, with the Thursday episode only being if it is necessary to carry over the Sunday content. So that's kind of a stable release that you guys are going to be able to rely on, and thank you for that. Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com. DCBService.com remains your discount subscription source. Final Crisis, Legion of Three Worlds, number 1 of 5, is available at a special discount of 2 at 75% off. Written by Jeff Johns, art by George Perez and Scott Koblish, with covers by George Perez. This is the one that features the Legion of the Superheroes versus the Legion of the Supervillains, Superman Prime versus Superman, and takes place in the 31st century. The Time Trapper is the main villain, and this is definitely one you don't want to miss. Regularly $3.99, only 99 cents with the 75% off discount. So definitely check that out from DCBS. Continuing in our Legion theme is Legion of the Superheroes number 45, written by Jim Shooter, art and cover by Francis Manapul and John Livesey. A massive intruder planet has appeared near Jupiter, and its gravity is ripping apart the solar system under Brainiac 5's guidance. Lightlass and Starboy must fight back, but they'll have to do the impossible, moving planets to the end of chaos and carnage. Regularly $2.99, with the 40% off discount, only $1.79 at DCBService.com. If you haven't had a chance to check out Jim Shooter's return to the Legion of the Superheroes, Legion of the Superheroes Enemy Rising hardcover is available at a special 50% off. Regularly $19.99, only $9.99 at DCBService.com. This 192-page volume collects Legion of the Superheroes 37 to 44. So definitely you want to check that one out. It's a wonderful series if you haven't been checking it out before. This is the time to grab it at such a great price. Whatever your shipping preferences, whether you want to go weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, bag and boarding preferences, DCB Service remains your shopping source. Thank you for your sponsorship, DCBService.com. Also want to remind everyone about In Stock Trades. Our In Stock Trades book of the month for June is going to be Seven Soldiers Volume 2, which they're offering right now at a whopping 47% off. It's regularly $14.99, only $7.94 with that 47% off discount. So if you haven't picked up this volume, now is the time to do it. They also have the other volumes available at a 37% off discount, which is wonderful. So definitely check out InStockTrades.com, which is the sponsor of our book of the month. So thank you again for your sponsorship, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what kind of podcast are we?
Well, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
So it's Sunday night, it's late for me, and I want to jump you right into our discussion. This is Matt Kramer from the Shades Journal podcast, and our contest winner joining us for Legion of the Superheroes and Eye for an Eye. Part 1 of a 2-part discussion.
You filthy criminals.
Our next review is going to be Legion of the Superheroes, an Eye for an Eye, which is an in-stock trades discussion. We're going to be doing issues 1 through 6. The Paul Levitz and Keith Giffen are the co-plotters on issues 1 through 5. Paul Levitz is the writer. Keith Giffen, Steve Lytle, Joe Orlando are on the pencils. Larry Malstead is the inker. Carl Gafford is the colorist. John Costanza is the letterer. And the covers were done by Giffen, Lytle, and Malstead. And joining us is Matt Kramer from the Shades Journal podcast. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you actually for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for
This is probably the longest wait for any prize ever in a contest. It's not really much of a prize anymore, is it?
It's worth it.
We're glad to have you, though. This one, it was funny. Before we started recording this formally, I was talking to Matt and Jim, and I had the single issues of this, but I liked it so much I did go out and buy the trade. So it was obviously first impressions of this story. It was something that struck me. But I remember when this came out initially, I had just started going to local comic shops. Our local one was called Comics and Collectibles. DC had just started this like higher quality direct market format. And at the time, I had an extremely limited budget because, I was a kid, and I was reading Teen Titans. So it was like I had a choice of A or B, and I had read some Legion from my friend Mike, who lived around the corner. And it was that era where you traded with friends, and that was how you read books that you didn't have any budget for. And I'd always liked the Legion, but because my history was so much more with the Batman family of characters, if I'm following somebody, it's Dick Grayson. So, and it was the Wolfman and Perez stuff. So it was interesting, though. You couldn't lose in this case because you had Giffen and Levitz doing this, and you had Wolfman and Perez doing that. This was a great time to be a comic fan when these Baxter format series were coming out. What did you guys think initial impressions-wise on this series, especially reading it today? How did this hold up for you? For me, it was a journey back to this era. For you guys, though, Jim, I'm especially curious on your end because I know Matt's had exposure to this. Jim, what did you think of it first, and then we'll get Matt's impressions as well.
Well, it's funny. We did our notes and did the original reading so long ago. This was one of the story arcs that got me into, my current Legion happy feeling I was. This is one of those things, there's such a heavy, thick story, and there's a lot of backstory, and there's a lot of, it's one little bit here is going to play out in future story arcs, and it was just this ongoing cycle thing where I'm like, okay, I can understand why people have such a fever loyalty to the Legion. This started off with the Great Darkness saga that we covered. Then when we did this, I'm like, okay, I'm getting the Legion, happy feeling, and that's so really for me. This was the launch off to my current, happy Legion feelings.
And Matt, you picked this one. What made you decide that you really wanted to talk about this story?
This is probably not only one of my favorite Legion stories of all time. This is one of my favorite DC stories of all time. It's just so good. And unlike some of the stuff from this era, this holds up perfectly. And I think everyone should go out and read it. And with the trade coming out now, you don't have any excuse not to.
Yeah, and it really is nice because you get, not only do you get the first 5 issues in that trade, but you also get issue 6, which is really a epilogue story to this whole event. So it's really, you get a complete nice picture. And for those of you that listened to our Great Darkness Saga episode, you're going to see that there were actually threads from this that spun out of Great Darkness Saga, and there were parts in the Great Darkness Saga that take place after this. At least in that trade that we did at that point in time.
Yeah.
And this is about a year and a half after the Great Darkness Saga came out, I believe.
Yeah, so this was interesting for me because, like I said, I've had, throughout my life different exposures to the Legion teams, but it was nice to completely immerse myself in something from this era that I didn't get to read when it came out initially. And it really was the dense storytelling, and I mean that totally as a compliment. The amount of just sheer story in each issue and what was going on here, I was blown away by this whole thing. Why don't we get ahead and get right into the issues right here, because when we open up in issue 1, we're in 2984 AD. The issue opens with Lightning Lord, and it really starts to set the tone. The Legion of Supervillains is banded together with this pact. And their pact is that they're each going to kill one Legionnaire. But I liked how they presented this, in my eyes, as a burden. It's one thing to be a criminal, but to have like a darker mindset, to cross a line of ending another's life, there are many of the greatest villains who avoid murder. it's not who they are. And I liked the distinction that some would be more comfortable with this than others, and that this is a pact that holds them together as part of their goals. But then later we find out, and we'll talk about this as the story progresses, and I did like the slow progression where you gradually found out that there was more to this story as it was going on. It was neat. I liked that whole setup.
Yeah, and you gotta love just the nice little sibling rivalry of wanting to kill his family and et cetera. And if I had a penny for every time one of my brothers wanted to kill me, I'd be a very rich man.
He promised to kill his brother Lightning Lad, but it sets the tone of who he is, though. You know, the name Lightning Lord implies an ego, and this carries over that none but him has the right to kill his own blood. And he really keeps consistent with that, not just with his brother, but when we start seeing dealings with his sister later in the story, this becomes a tone with him that this really is, in his eyes, his blood should not be tainted by others. Well, we jump over to Ventura. Dreamgirl and Starboy are at the casinos, and it was interesting to see how their presence would be noticed. They are stars, like film and TV stars are to us, and people would be discussing it. I mean, think about nowadays, you can't pop on the internet without getting a pop-up or a message about this star's doing this, that star's doing that. So they're discussing, like, this recent vision of hers. One of the Legion's going to die, and there's that foreboding tone throughout this whole thing. This was cut short by a robber, and it looks like a common casino crime, and they make short work of the situation until the robber shrinks out of sight. And I will say I like the slow build. The gradual introduction of the characters and villains. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, now, one of the things I really dig throughout this segment was those Encyclopedia Galactica notes that they throw in there, and it was just something from, that era, just a little commentary on what this is, where it is, and whatnot. I was digging that. That was something I'm reading this going, oh, that's cool. I wish they had more stuff like that currently. It was just that a little bit. But something, though, it is going to be a weird statement. This is another one of my weird statements. It's the beard on Tom. It's got to go, man. He just doesn't... He doesn't look like a hero with it. He looks like he's somebody's dad.
Well, you got to remember this was 1984, too.
I know. It needs to go, man. They need to shave it.
Yeah. He looks like somebody's dad.
He does. He doesn't look like a Legion of Superhero. He doesn't look like, I don't know. It just...
Are you saying it makes him look less heroic?
In a way, yes. It's weird. I know. It's weird, but it's just something about it. I'm just like, he needs to shave that. Maybe shave it down to, the goatee.
G.I. Joe?
They don't have beards. They're clean shaven.
No. No, the original G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip.
Oh, okay. Well, the original, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's less heroic because he had a beard?
No, his was actually...
He was gritty.
He was gritty. See, Tom's got the full beard, the bushy beard.
Oh, so you're saying you'd like him to shave it down and make it more stubbly?
Yeah, more stubbly. Or clean shaven, or maybe down to like the goatee or the Van Dyke or something like that. Just something a little bit more stylish.
You're a sick man.
It's the first thing I thought of when I saw him when I saw him without the like, oh.
But his haircut regulation.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be regulation. Just, I don't know, less bushy.
So, do you think though that was something because of the era? That was why.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That was a definite era, and and whatnot. So I'm like, but it's
But if he's futuristic, that means it just came back. So retro's cool. No, really, because the Legion could get away with anything.
Yeah, they could.
Because it's the future.
Now, why didn't they have the big old bell bottoms? So that would have been neat.
Well, they did in a certain eras of the Legion.
They did?
Yeah. Phantom Girl had the big bell bottoms on her. It is Phantom Girl, right? The white outfit. She had the big belt bottoms for the longest time, I believe. Am I right, Matt? I guess for me, I really liked the Legion costumes quite a bit and felt that everything kind of held up well. It's interesting to hear. I knew you would be one that would. I think for Matt and myself, it's probably because we lived through the era that. And actually, because Matt, when did you start reading the Legion? I should actually ask that first. What is your history with the Legion? Did you read it as it was coming out? Did you jump on later? Because actually, I probably shouldn't make that assumption. When did you become a Legion fan?
I first started reading the Legion with the crossover with the Superman books that happened right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, with the whole time trapper and pocket universe stuff, if you're familiar with that storyline. That's where I started reading, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. There were so many characters, and it was really, really confusing, but I loved it, and I went back and found as many of the early issues as I could. So that's where I first started reading on a regular basis, but I had read some stuff prior to this, like a few scattered issues out of either Adventure Comics or Superboy. So I hadn't had a whole lot of exposure prior to, I think it was issue 37 or so when I started reading, but after that I've been reading it pretty much straight through.
So it sounds like, at least our early experiences with the Legion, our experiences were very similar, and then you just, though, jumped on them and actually have stuck with them a lot longer than I have, it's great. Because I really do, I have developed, especially in some of the stuff we've been doing on the show recently, a great love for the older Legion material, and I want to go back and start getting as much of this as I can. Like, this is... we're going up to Wizard World Chicago, and I'm going to be going through a lot of convention pins looking for as much Legion stuff as I can grab, because I am really Legion happy at the moment.
Last year, I grabbed a whole bunch of the Adventure Comics Legion run at Chicago, so I'm guessing there'll be plenty there for you.
That is actually one of the nice things about that con. I've always found that to be a really good shopping con. So if anybody's going to Chicago and they haven't been there before, I highly recommend you bring some money.
And
you've completed whole runs there, haven't you?
I've completed whole runs there, so yeah, I completed my Titans, Outsiders,
Robin
run, yeah.
Which was a hefty run.
Which is a very hefty run and a very costly run, and it was a lot to fly it back, to Cleveland, so... That's going to be interesting this year.
We had to buy, just a little side, we had to buy additional suitcases because our suitcases were too heavy to put out. We realized when we got back to the hotel room and we started putting our stuff in our suitcases, we went to pick them up and we're like, dude, these are too heavy. I mean, excessively too heavy. So we went down, and in hindsight, we probably would have been just as well served to pay the penalty.
Yeah, we would have.
and just to send over the luggage. But we went down to the gift shop, and we're buying mini suitcases to put comics in so we can fly them back home.
Oh.
And here's the funny thing is, one, the suitcases cost more than the expense would have been, but I remember when I weighed mine, I actually would have been just underneath the mark. Because it's 50 pounds. It's 50 pounds per, and both my suitcases together were around 51.
I was way over, though.
Yeah.
I had trades, I had hardcovers, I had single issues. It was a mess. One of the things, though, get back to this story, I really did like the slow build and the gradual introduction of the characters and the villains in this. They could have easily jumped into many more characters than they did. And actually, that was one of the funny points when you were saying just how many characters there were, Matt. That was one of the things I really liked about the pacing of this story, because they showed them by pairing them up or in small groups. So it was easier to get your head around all the major players on both sides. And this, to me, was a tremendous compliment to the writing. Levitz and Giffen were both clearly aware, with this being a relaunch, that you would need to be ready for potential new readers. Yet they did it within the story arc. So it didn't alienate, older, longtime fans. It wasn't like they spelled out, this is who this character is, and gave us, lengthy dialogue and introduction. The characters are so well-rounded that you don't need to do that. They kind of speak for themselves in the situations if you put them in small groups where the fans can kind of see, okay, this is their relationship, this is how they're interacting. I was very clear who everybody was because of how they did it. We go to the Earth Legion headquarters, and there's this quick check-in with Colossal Boy and his wife Yura and Caputo. They are settling into their new quarters, and it's kind of the calm before the storm. There's a nice commentary on racism, with her being worried about no Durlands, in the premises, and on the leases and those type of things. And I love when fiction relates to real issues of society. This somehow makes it easier to connect with the characters as three-dimensional, like this is real world. And there's even that funny bit with Computo adjusting his programming to the fact that he interrupted a conversation that clearly should not have been interrupted at that time. And the little tiny details, and that's what this thing is filled with. I'm going to reference a few of them along the way, where there's just little tiny bits that add depth, add a feeling of a universe, add a feeling of reality and realism to this whole thing. And that was where it really was like, I'm like, wow, I really get why people are heavy into the Legion. It's cool.
It's kind of like, background art. When you're looking at a book and there's these little things off to the side that make it realistic. Oh, that's cool. They have that in the actual writing in the story. And I got to agree with you completely. It was just an element of realism for me when I was reading a lot of this stuff. It felt like these were actual real people, and you wanted to jump in the comic and join them.
And they did a good job of not overdoing it. Because you could have done too much and it would have taken you out of the drama of the story. They did it in little bits and little sections, and some of it was set up for future events in Legion arcs. It was clear for that, and there was things where I was scratching my head and I'm like, okay, I don't get who this character is or where they're going to play in, but and I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying it was clear to me as a new reader to this particular era that certain parts were meant for future setup. And I'm like, that's cool. And I appreciated that because I'm like, I wanted to know who that character is. I wanted to know, there's stuff with Timberwolf later. There's a character who was, and I'll save it for when we get to that point. But there's little bits like that tease events in the future. And I like that. I really thought that was very well paced throughout this. As we head over to Daxam, there's the aftermath of Darkseid. The planet is just now recovering. There is a great concept of sovereign races and needing to have a certain status to be a part of the United Planets. And Daxam's trying to reestablish that level of things. Shadowlass, Mon-El, Chameleon Boy, Ultra Boy, and Timberwolf are brought in here. And again, there's a nice establishing of political status quo and a history of the Daxamite under Darkseid to show how, one may have kept that role as a villain, saying that, there's some people who on Daxam maybe didn't drop all of that when Darkseid went away. They go to deal with the renegade Daxamites as we basically, flash to Ventura at this point. On Ventura, Microlad turns out to be the casino crook. And the place is in lockdown. He figured it's going to be easy enough for him to shrink and sneak out, kind of like the Atom does, finding little nooks and crannies. But there's no such luck as he encounters Shrinking Violet. And he basically assumes that this is going to be the perfect hostage situation. But this was awesome because it introduced to new readers the concept of the sense tank as a prison. While it doesn't explain completely that it's a sensor deprivation tank, you get the idea from the dialogue that it's not a place that either wants to be again on any level. And there's this past history between the two that's established here. Similar powers would indicate that they would naturally be opponents in the field. Great strength of character that shows while she was defeated by him before, she learned from it and has come back somehow stronger. And when she's about to capture him, we see this portal open for the first time, leaving her along with Starboy and Dreamgirl to wonder what this new threat is.
Yeah, I'm glad that, one, we have a strong female character, so that's kind of nice to read, but also that she's not just the one-trick pony. She, isn't just shrink down size. She was able to throw down. She was able to kick a little butt, in the fight between them. So I liked that. That was a cool thing for me to read going, oh, okay, yeah, she's kind of interesting. I want to know more about her. It's a nice introduction to her for me.
Matt, I got a question. Do you have a favorite Legionnaire? Do you have somebody that stands out for you that you're like, this is whenever there's a Legion story, when this character's in there, because it's such a vast group with so many diverse personalities. Do you have a favorite one that stands out for you?
Oh man, that's
I know it's probably a very tough question, but or even favorites who are just some that jump to your mind.
Well, I've always been a fan of Timberwolf and Dreamgirl and Starboy. Those are probably my three most favorite Legionnaires. Part of the reason I like Starboy and Dreamgirl is just their interaction, and it's always been like the bickering on again, off again couple, and it's just fun.
We're back to Wynath, and
Yes.
I tell you, I like the fact that Lightless went to the Starfire School of Modesty. You gotta love that. Naked sunbathing, yes! Always a good thing in a comic.
She is the sister of Lightning Lord and Lightning Lad, and she's one of the main players in this drama. And this looks like the perfect tropical vacation spot. She and Sarah both appear to be sunbathing, and I did some reading on this character. It was interesting for me to see how many fan sites and web communities that are out there devoted to the Legion with fan fiction and fan thoughts on the history of these characters. And I guess there was a great deal of question. I don't know how true this is on whether or not she was bisexual from some of the scenes she was in and some of her friendships. I don't know if it was established or not. And I don't know much about whether or not, this was ever put into concrete. And I don't really care one way or another. I just found it interesting when I read about her. It wasn't just exclusive to her, and it would fit to talk about her just because we're at this point, but it seemed all the characters. There were people who had connected different plot threads and storylines to their long history in establishing who they are in some background maybe that was beyond even the stuff that was actually put into print. And I'm always a big fan of that kind of fan base.
And I have to say now, she is now my favorite character.
Like I said, it wasn't something that mattered to me in either way. I just thought it was interesting to see. There were multiple sites that I came across that had that speculation about her, which wasn't somewhere my head went reading this.
It's funny. You mentioned my gaydar went off big time when I was reading this, and I just kind of dismissed it because I figured, oh, okay, that's just the era I was writing. But there was a couple of times when it did. There was a couple of the characters as well where it just I'm like, am I just reading more into this than I should be? So yeah, I can definitely pick it up.
And I guess for me, because I knew about this heavy relationship she had with Timberwolf, I didn't get the vibe because I knew that there was that going on there. So I didn't know. It was funny. It was really interesting that even came up. I don't know, Matt, was that ever established? What her, I guess, as long as we throw it out there, you've read more of it than I have. Or was that something that was just kind of like people were making assumptions about? Or
it was never really concretely laid out, but there were a whole bunch of hints. It was really hinted that she had a relationship with Shrinking Violet, I believe it was, and that comes up a lot more in the next volume of Legion of Superheroes, the 5-year gap. A lot of that the sexuality stuff comes up in that volume.
And I guess due to stress, this character, she left the Legion due to just some kind of personal confusion, and she went here with Sarah and the kids, figuring, and I don't blame her. It just seemed like if I'm going somewhere for a vacation, I'm going there because it just seemed wonderful. Of course, nothing is that simple as she's being watched by two different people. There is that shadowy figure in the background, and I'm not quite sure who he was, because he's the one that I was talking about before. We do find out that he has some connection to Timberwolf, because he was sending some data on her to Timberwolf. And but she's eventually captured by Radiation Roy, who was also watching her, and they're pulled away into a portal. Now, who was that shadowy guy, Matt?
He is... this is a storyline that'll come up in the next... probably in the next set of issues, but he is actually a future descendant of Batman. That is a private investigator, and one of the big storylines that's going to come up is descendants of the Justice League are going to be murdered, and he is investigating that.
Oh, that is really
nice.
Cool.
Is that one traded yet, or?
It'll be in the next. It should be the next trade.
Oh, cool.
Are they going to continue these trade volumes?
I'm not sure, but I think they probably would.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
I hope they do.
Yeah, I'm hoping this one's successful enough to do that, because I really, really dug this. Like I said, I read it because, as Jim mentioned, we had planned this ages ago. So I read it 2 times back then. Then I read it a 3rd time to get kind of a refresher. But then I bought the trade, and because I really wanted to have this fresh in my head, I read the trade twice. So I've read this particular storyline a lot. And you know what? I will say this. I could have gotten away with reading it twice. Once initially when we did it, and the second time. I really read it those multiple times because of how much was going on in the storyline and how much I thoroughly enjoyed it. That I really wanted to get my head on it, every minute detail, and I still don't think I did. We go to Takran Galtos, the prison, and this segment showed just how dangerous someone with powers similar to Superman can be if they're unbalanced. They arrive to find a horribly burned man telling that a kid did this, and I chuckled a little bit at the frustration of Timberwolf, who always likes to be in the action, but finds himself left behind as Ultra Boy and Mon-El see signs of the villain and speed off. And it's an interesting comparison, I thought, to the events of things like Ranthanagar. We see the kid is like a cultist. He's still worshiping Darkseid. There's these creepy alien criminals who are encouraging him to burn another alien, like a child burning ants. And, there's a sacrifice for the Dark Lord. And, I mean, it was just that whole vibe that I got there was overall real creepy. But I liked it. It worked really well because he was another, definitely very different than the rest of the Legion of Supervillains that were presented here. He was very twisted.
He reminded me so much of Superboy Prime that I kind of chuckled when I first read it, going, "Oh, okay." That same type of mindset, and Now,
Matt, spinning out of this story, do the Legion of Supervillains get back together again post this?
And I don't think even before this they'd had more than a handful of appearances, and that was probably in the 60s the last time they'd appeared prior to this.
They were really, really a cool group. Mon-El and Ultra Boy arrived too late, and that was great too because you get to see the frustration in these heroes. They live to save lives and protect others, and how frustrating is it when that doesn't happen? The alien was burned to a crisp, and the villainous kid brags that he has all the powers of Mon-El and grateful aliens who are his friends because he freed them from the prison. I don't know, he's got to pick a better group of friends, though.
Yeah.
It's a sad-looking bunch.
Now, the sacrifice, was that a prisoner or was that a guard? Because that's the interesting thing. If it was a prisoner and they were still rushing in to save him, that really is a cool statement of just them as heroes, that all life is precious and they're going to, try to fight even for this villain. Now, if it's a guard, it would make even more sense, but it's like, I don't know. That was one of the things when I was reading, I was like, oh, okay, cool.
I would take it was a guard or somebody, or an innocent bystander more than anything else, because there seemed to be just this kind of perverse pleasure from all of the criminals. Like, nobody was really fearful of him, which I would think if he was killing a criminal, you would at least see some of them a little afraid. Is he gonna do this to me next?
Yeah, am I next? Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of always assumed it was a guard also, but it never says, so you never know.
Back on Earth, there's these bits with Colossal Boy and Yura. And they were good because, again, they set up that there's always these continuing Legion stories. His mother resigned as Earth president, which was a shock, and makes you wonder what the political status will be like for the Legion in the future. And I really liked the reaction of the people here, wondering if he was moving in. Again, the celebrity coming into the neighborhood, but it did add a realistic flavor because it was just like, again, you just see them standing there, they look like little specks because he's so huge. And going, hey, is Colossal Boy moving in? Well, duh. Back on Winath, there was this shadowy figure on the ridge before Radiation Roy attacks, and like we said, he has that connection to Timberwolf, and I love the fact that he's related to Batman in some level. Do you remember his name?
I think it's just MW.
The W perhaps standing for Wayne? Would that be?
That's what I believe. I don't know if he ever got a full name, but I'm pretty sure it was at least MW.
Back on Takran Galtos, the kid is identified as Olvir at this point, and while the Legion is battling the prison escapees, the portal opens again. Now the Legion learns that the Legion of Supervillains is recruiting, and I did like how they were learning gradually like we are in the storytelling. Olvir and most of, if not all of the prisoners, were taken and pulled in for the group. And the portal closes violently before Mon-El can get through. And I like that. He was trying to do the dun-da-da, I'm going to go sweep in and I'll do all that. But he got a handy spanking and that thing shut. The issue closes with the Lightning Lord finding out from the Sun Emperor about the additional recruits. And it had a very nice mystery build right in the beginning. We still don't know all the plans of the Legion of Supervillains and are kind of journeying with our heroes. And that was what really struck me with the storytelling. Because in issue 1, we still don't know the villain's complete plan, which to me I thought was a strength of this arc.
Definitely, and you learn the plan as the Legion does.
And that to me is, we want to be there with the characters. We want to be a part of their journey and feel like we're one of them. And that is one of the ways that a good writing team knows how to include you in the book. Those just little ways that you do the storytelling so that we feel like we are sitting there and hanging out with the heroes. Because really, who doesn't, comics are about escapism, and who doesn't on some level want to feel drawn into that world in that capacity?
Yeah, and plus I like the fact that, that they did reveal to the heroes that it's the Legion of Supervillains, because it's going to add to the anticipation of the story. It's going to add to the build-up. Well, how are the Legions going to respond? What are they going to do? It was a nice way to end up the issue with that, bang for your buck kind of thing to draw you into the next issue. Had this been like back in '84, or even nowadays, had I just been picking up and read it, the ending there would have been enough to get me to go, okay, I want to read the next issue just to see how the Legion reacts to this. It was enough of that pull-in.
As we kick into issue 2, while the Legion is receiving the alert, we see a real creepy sequence with Mech and his sister. He wants to kill their brother, but wants... how do you pronounce her name?
I always pronounced it Ayla, but it could be Isla, or... I've just always pronounced it Ayla.
Okay, Ayla works for me. But he wants Ayla to join him. And he looks at her leaving the Legion as like an opening for that. It's a chance for him to kind of get in there, because he considers her a potential ally. Here's the creepy part, though. He wants Esper Last to put blocks in place. Did you take that to mean blocks on her powers or something to alter her personality? Because I totally look at that as like, she's going to mess with your head and you're going to be changed by this. And what a creepy thing to ask of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Especially his own sister.
Yeah, because you got to think, is she going to be the same after that? I mean, what would that do to you? Somebody goes in there and makes scrambled eggs of your inner workings, and you got to wonder, are you going to be okay afterwards? Are you going to be the same person? Are you going to be even coherent? Because, one wrong move and...
Yeah, just ask Dr. Light what it's like when people start messing with your head, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lot weight. And it's a very good example. It's a lot like what Zatanna was doing in that story. So here we're going back in 1984, and they were already doing things like this with the villains in there. So interesting contrast. I didn't even think of it that way. He wants validation that he is right, that Lightning Lad is inferior. He wants her for support. His ego needs this, which causes his lightning-fused temper tantrum. I wouldn't tell this guy he was nuts, but since they're childhood, brother and sisters and all that, it fits the brother and sister relationship. But I'm sorry, this dude, he starts going off on a temper tantrum. I'm not going to fuel that fire. We go to M17W here, and I'm a big Wildfire fan. So it's great to see him and Dawnstar in this segment. Magnolad and Titania are teaming up. And the idea is that there is another plan in place for the Legion of Supervillains. And I like that we got to see that here, that there's something more. There's another twist. They need the power spheres for some reason. And there's no black market for these fusion power spheres, so why are they stealing them when there's no profit? And I liked that we got to learn that with the Legionnaires as they were explaining it. Wildfire's taken out by rupturing his containment suit as he tries to stop them, again showing that there's a history with this character. They were ready for him. Dawnstar's being chased by Lazon, who's giving her a run for her money. And I'm glad they didn't lay out the goals right away, because... again, this just continues, this great build in this whole thing. But when Dawnstar was flying away, she didn't even know at that point what had happened to Wildfire. She was hoping, that he was hopefully still okay at this point.
One of the things that got me with this fight sequence which I really liked, was how, Wildfire was just kind of a little bit cocky when he's dealing with them, because they dealt with these guys before. They had taken them out so easily. He really wasn't too worried about them, but this time they're organized. This time they're more of a concentrated fire. It's more of a plan. It's not, they definitely have a leadership structure. They have a definite attack plan, and they're working together, and I like that. That's how they were able to really defeat him. Once again, it's thinking of Dr. Light, when the first time Light faced the Titans after all the mind wiping and all the stuff had been cleared, he took out all of the Titans, and he completely decimated them without even batting an eye, just showing them, this is how powerful I really am. Same kind of thing with these guys. I like that, seeing the villains, if they work together, if they're cohesive, they can win. And that, for me, was a really cool theme throughout this issue, throughout this whole series, that if the villains work together, they could actually win. It gives you that realistic feel to the comic that, okay, maybe, is this going to have a happy ending? Are the good guys going to win in the end? It's that doubt which makes the reading so much fun.
When you see that what they did was, they realized at this point that if they break up the heroes and reverse it, instead of, like, they realized from the fact that as villains, when they were in small groups, they were captured pretty easily by the Legion of Superheroes. So now they're realizing, hey, if we all band together and we split them up, we now have better chances. And we begin to see that gradually as this storyline goes on, actually being the case that they actually are doing quite well as time goes on against the Legion of Superheroes. Guys, what did you think of the art all the way through this? We actually had an art shift in the storytelling. I'm not saying this is the best point necessarily to talk about that particular part, but I will say we went from Giffen to Lytle to Orlando at the end. And I want to compliment the inker as well, because even though there was that shift between the art, it was never jarring for me in this story. I thought the action, the fight scenes were always top-notch. There was a lot of action, a lot of drama built into these fights. And I never felt at any point in time that, like, I had this jarring change. Like, when you pay attention to the fact that, okay, we got a new artist on this issue, you can notice subtle differences. But there is a consistency of flow throughout these issues where the art style very, very much complements each other, even though we do make that artistic switch. I really enjoyed the art. I thought it was very detailed. The action sequences were fantastic. Lots of really strong facial expressions. It, to me, was, I thought, a very big strength in the storytelling of this series, and one of the reasons why I'm geeking out so much right now about it.
I believe the art style pretty much stays consistent throughout the whole series. I think it gets a little noticeably different towards the end, but that was just where the art of its time was going.
So it's a shift in era versus a shift in the actual book itself.
Right. But towards the end of this series, they all get their late 80s costumes, which definitely not a highlight of the book.
Well, that seemed to be the trend, though, in the late 80s. Everybody was getting a new costume, and they would always release, that was when they started releasing the double covers with the new costume. And
they realized that comic book fans would go out and buy it if they oh, look at this, it's a new ooh, I'm gonna get it.
Why do you think I'm mentioning it? I was a sucker.
Dude, you still are.
I know I am.
You bought the DC Zero's second issue just so you'd have the alternate cover.
Yeah, and it was funny, we were talking about this right before, and I'm like, okay, this is a teaser book, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed DC Zero, but why do I've already got multiple copies of Zero because I got some free copies, when I ordered stuff. So I'm like, why do I need another copy of DC Zero? And I bought it for the cover.
Yeah. Well, and since we're talking,
I am definitely part of the problem.
Since we're a little bit off topic, let me just take us further off. When we read the original individual issues, Sean, let me borrow them, they had this really cool advertisement in there where if you mail in 3 proof of purchases from Fig Newtons, you'll get a free comic book. Now, I tell you, even nowadays, if they were to offer something like that, I would do it. And I don't even like Fig Newtons. But I would rationalize in my head saying, yeah, this could be a rare comic someday. Oh, I got to get this. And I would literally go out, buy 3 packages of Fig Newtons, cut out the things, and set it in and get my free comic book.
The garbage man, like,
yeah.
God, this guy throws away a lot of Fig Newtons.
Well, I I know I did stuff like that. I think there was some kind of detergent that you could mail in for a Spider-Man comic back in the day, and these little advertisements are really cool.
Yeah, that was. I remember as a kid, it was always the cutting and asking. It was always asking my mom, because my mom was the one that she supported my sickness. So, good or bad, but she really was the patient one that would be, let's just keep him, let's just keep him happy, and he'll go read in the corner. But no, she was the one that got me subscriptions to comics and things like that. So she really was, honestly, my love for this came from the fact that my mom was just so supportive of it. But it would be one of those things where I'd see ads for something. To this day, she still, every Christmas, there is a Batman mug or a superhero thing. Like if she finds something at a store, whether it's some kind of standee or something like that, little trinkety things that I wouldn't spot nowadays. She all of a sudden finds it. I'm like, where did you find this? Or if she's at a flea market, she'll grab something. So it's actually that's, and I still get the joy of when you get that thing. I'm like, it ends up being my coolest gift, whatever it is, because it is that little goofy trinkety thing that you could have only gotten from sending in Bruce a purchase or something like that. All right, as we jump back to the Legion headquarters, now that the alert has been sounded, the Legion has to react. The current leader, Element Lad, is meeting with Phantom Girl, Cosmic Boy, Bloke, and White Witch with Colossal Boy to come up with a plan. We learn of the past battle with the Legion of Supervillains where Colossal Boy was forced to betray the team on some level because his parents were being held hostage. And I did like that. They were showing newer readers some history, that this isn't, something that's just contained to this issue. Dream Girl comes on screen and we get the added fusion power spheres detail. And I like this idea of the gathering of a group to brainstorm. It would make sense in a group this size to try and coordinate on some level. They're realizing that their opponents are quite organized and they've got people all over the place, so they need to try to find a way to regroup and get things together. And I did like that concept a great deal. It was very smart. Speaking of Dream Girl, she and Starboy, who I'm adoring in the JSA, are having a slight Pickering session. I get the vibe that he would really love to take some major time away from the Legion to just be with her. He seems to long for this normal life that he's talking about.
Yeah. That's a recurring theme, that they always just want to get away, but they're never able to.
Is the theme usually that she's drawing them back in then?
It's usually a little of both of them. There is I think probably about a year before this, there was a spotlight on Starboy where he didn't want her to win the Legion leadership because he wanted to be able to take time off to spend with her.
Which would make sense. It's actually, because that taking on that type of role and that type of responsibility in any situation where you're taking on a political role like that, it is going to be more time away, and there's going to be less time for interpersonal relationships. So that actually rings very true to me to real life, and I like that a great deal. I secretly think, though, it was his beard that drew them back into the Legion, Jim. So what you take as a weakness, I take as a Samson-like strength. As he tries to point out the advantages, Shrinking Violet is itching for battle, and she has something to prove here. And I was really liking her journey through all this, because it was clear that she had been through some trauma, and that, she had overcome it, which is always great to see from a hero, where you can see that kind of inner strength and see her coming back. So I found myself, I'm like, I don't know a lot of her story, just the tidbits that I got from, what was going on with her and Microlad, but I was really finding myself rallying behind her and being like, she'd been through something. And whatever it is, it's pretty traumatic, and just to see her kind of, rallying back. Do you know what she had gone through up to this point?
I believe she'd been kidnapped by the Assassins Guild and held hostage, and she had actually been replaced on the team by by
Microlab?
what's uh
Or is it somebody else?
the Derwin, Yira. She had been replaced by her, and Yira was actually a spy for the Assassin's Guild.
Oh, wow. So she and Colossal Boy probably had an interesting relationship to wind up where they are now.
Yeah, because I think he'd had the relationship with Shrinking Violet at the time, and then when she was revealed as being a spy, they continued their relationship.
Oh, interesting. Okay, as we go to M17W, Dawnstar is distracted by Wildfire's suit rupturing, and Lazon almost kills her except for the timely arrival of Mon-El. When he and Ultra Boy try to apprehend another portal and 3 villains escape with the power spheres. Dawnstar gets medical attention, which kind of adds to the intensity, because I love when we see heroes get battle scars as they're going along. They don't always have the pretty costumes that just never seem to get damaged or anything. I like, little rips and tears. It adds a sense of danger and excitement here. I knew who was going to die when I read this. I had known that enough of the Legion history to do that. But I have to imagine at the time that this was released, it must have been intense to wonder who Dreamgirl's who prophecy was referring to, because you wouldn't have known that, because we didn't have the internet at that time, and it would have been kind of, especially seeing what happened to Dawnstar, there would have been a lot of fans going, no, not Dawnstar.
And I didn't know, actually, when we started doing this, who died. So that was kind of cool going through this, because there was one point in time when I was like, bingo, that's the person that dies. And we'll get to it later. They have this great dialogue where I'm like, it's got to be them. And, of course, it wasn't them. It was the actual person. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So there was enough little teasers throughout this that at the time, if you didn't know the outcome, it would keep you going, who is it? Oh, okay. Is it? Oh, is it? So it was nice writing on how this was laid out.
Now, Matt, because of your history with the Legion, when you read this, did you know who was going to die when you read it the first time through, or was it kind of an open experience for you?
Yeah, I knew who died when I first read it because of I believe they referenced it during the Superman crossover that I first read.
So I would be curious to hear from maybe if any of our listeners had actually read this back when it was originally released. If you could share with us maybe on the forums what your experience was like with that. Did you, who did you think was going to die? Did you, all along assume certain characters, or, was that something that, was kind of organic as it went on? Because I'd be just curious to see what that experience was like, because I find that fascinating. These moments with the Legion Trinity, because we shift to that at this point, after Wildfire gets his new containment suit. The moments with the Legion Trinity echo some of the stuff, I just read JLA 21, and I'm not going to spoil any of that here, but I found some parallels very interesting to that in this storytelling. Private conversations between Lightning Lad, Cosmic Boy, and Saturn Girl, where, they debate the situation, and I wonder if Mech, Lightning Lad's brother is involved. Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl need to sit this one out, though, because she's pregnant. And I can almost feel the frustration from the two, especially, Lightning Lad, he wants to jump in and be the Legionnaire, and you can tell the two are ready to, leap into action at any moment. As we talked about earlier, this was timeline-wise, I read the Great Darkness Saga in the traded format, and there were actually some bits that were epilogue in that trade that take place after this event. So we do learn in that event that, she was actually carrying twins. And it's interesting to see how that all played out in the Great Darkness Saga. So I highly recommend either seeking out that trade or the issues that were contained in that trade, because I forget what issue it was, but there was one issue that takes place, I'm guessing it was released sometime after this, because it reveals that fact.
It was an annual, I think it was the third annual from the previous Legion series.
And it is worth noting because there's an interesting twist in there. And if you listen to our Great Darkness Saga episode, you already know what that is, but I don't want to say too much about that here. But it is definitely worth seeking that out. And if you want it spoiled, go back and listen to our Great Darkness Saga episode. You can hear all about what that was. It's interesting, though, that they worry about the Legion the way the Trinity does the JLA. I found the parallel interesting. They're the heavy hitters of the future, and I like that. They're looking over it and analyzing the team and just being, trying to tweak things and make sure that everything runs smoothly, even though they seem to be all on the sidelines. Were they all, Matt, at this point on a leave of absence from the team? Because I got the vibe that Cosmic Boy was kind of in a different status quo right now. Was he part of the team at this point, or was he there like an advisory capacity, or what was his status?
I'm actually not sure. I was trying to think of that as I was rereading this also. And I think he was still a part of the team, but I'm not quite sure how active he was.
And they did seem very similar to how we do with the JLA. You have to leave somebody on Earth, to kind of monitor things. So maybe that was his role in this particular case. He was there with Invisible Kid, who we never really, I don't remember, we don't really see him in this story, do we?
Not really.
Well, he was invisible. You couldn't have seen him. Jeez.
You've got a very good point.
There you go.
There. Well, we don't see anybody talking to him. Let me put it to you that way. I don't think. I think he's just referenced. Like the Great Darkness Saga, this had this tribute to a classic painting. We see the classic Jesus and the Last Supper painting with Lightning Lord and the 12 supervillains, which was real interesting at that point. And I guess that makes Nemesis Kid the God role. Is how at least I was reading the whole thing. It was interesting, though, to see that this series once again took a classic art piece and interspersed it in there. I like that. I like tiny little things. It's little nods that I think are just really cool that they don't have to do that kind of stuff, but it does make the reading experience much more interesting.
And I really like that it says who each of them are.
Yeah, it was nice because it kind of laid out all the main players in this drama, which was good because I had no clue who any of them are. And it was funny. I kept going back to, as I was doing my notes, I kept going back to that page to put heads with who they are. Because you're right, there are just a sheer... Forget the fact that the Legion just has so many people. Now you've got a group of enemies that have just as many people. We see a little more of their plan as Cosmic King and Nutrax discuss this great passage that they're building. There's no honor among thieves, as some want to leave the missing members behind. And the bits with Esper's lass is great. Alvir is a loose cannon, but he's like a powerful cannon. He rambles on about Darkseid, who is just a legend to all of them. And it did add to me this sense of vastness to the universe. Events with Darkseid would be legend if they were not witnessed. The Legion had beaten him, and unless your world was directly involved like Daxam was, why would you believe in him? And that was an interesting twist, because we're not talking about all these people being contained on the same planet. These are people from different worlds, completely. So those events would be obviously more fact to some people than others, depending on your connection. And I really liked that.
It really was a DC universe, if you will, not just and focus on one planet where we see now we have stuff happening in Metropolis and Gotham, and it's not completely fished over. Well, now we're dealing with an entire universe and with multiple planets and whatnot. That was it was a kind of a funny moment for me, but two, as you look at the deeper side of it, you're like, oh, okay, that's some cool, just extra, behind the story type of storytelling that I like, that it really draws you in.
Scope and scale.
Yeah.
That's really important. I liked that. Regardless of that debate, though, Olvir is obsessed, and they realize they have to keep a leash on this guy. And that was, because you see already, right from his introduction, that's a twisted little dude.
He's a passionate fella.
Sun Emperor remains concerned because this guy is crazy. Of course, this is the guy that kisses Thor to death by burning her alive and quoting Shakespeare. I do love villain moments in comics because they do add humor value with their sinister nature. And again, it's great to see that these villains are just as diverse in personality as like the Flash rogues, Batman's rogues, the Secret Six, just as diverse as the heroes we're witnessing in this storytelling. And good villains make for a good story. They are a good mirror image of the heroes that we're looking at in this one. And I see how the rest are shocked by his brutality, too. I liked that. The other villains were just kind of looking at him like, what did he just do?
Yeah.
And why?
And had they all been like, yeah, ha ha, it would have been a cheesy factor. The fact that we have realistic reactions from these villains takes away the dun dun dun, kind of evil, sinister, ha ha ha, kind of like goofy, campy stuff. It made it a serious, nasty moment that was also entertaining, and it was also like, okay, yeah, but you also, you learn this is a dark dude. This is a guy you don't want to mess with.
She was just a servant girl.
Yeah, she didn't do anything wrong. She just killed her for the fun of it. So someone who can take a life for that little of reason, when you give them a reason, what are they going to do with it?
Leadership was rotating in the Legion and voted on, and it added like this political drama. Were the fans, do you know, Matt, were the fans still voting at this point on who became Legion leader? Was that still a part of this?
I believe they were.
That was one of the things that I always found that was interesting with the Legion, the fact that readers at the time, and that's something I regret that I missed the boat on. That had to have been really fun, to feel like you had a say, even if your person didn't get voted in, to just feel like you had an opportunity to be a part of the book.
Yeah, and I think there are times where the readers voted some really weird leaders, and one of them is coming up at the end of this series where it just feels odd, and it kind of feels like the readers put the book in a bit of a hole with who they elected as leader.
Huh. And it probably, there's points where, while that sounds like a great idea on paper and probably was excellent on paper to a certain extent, you wind up with a weird enough person and the writers don't know what to do with them, that would put you in a very, very difficult position. Now, let me ask this. Did they give the readers a choice between certain characters, or did the readers just vote randomly on any of the Legion?
I believe it was just random, but it's been so long since I remember reading these, but I think it was random.
It's just
that can make things challenging for you.
Well, a very risky thing to do. But you got to applaud them for their goal of increasing interactivity with your audience base.
Now, the skeptic in me goes, did they really listen to the audience? Or did they just say, I want to do whatever we want to do, and just tell them, you voted for them. All right, good job.
Well, I think from what Matt's describing at the end of the series, whoever was involved in that was probably going, no, it was the fans that voted that in.
And if I remember correctly, there was some controversy at one point where the writers picked a different leader than the readers actually voted on, but I'm sure someone will correct me about that if I'm wrong.
That would be interesting, because it would be, and I could respect that, because I could see writers saying, but you need to understand our goal. I could see sitting at the table and being a part of that debate. Well, okay, traditionally we've always let the fans vote on the leader, but we have a story element here, or a story reason here. And I'm not saying that they did this either. I'm with you, as far as it'd be interesting to see if that actually happened. But I could see a reasoning why a writer would say, look, I know why we're doing this, and I think it's a great idea that we're having the readers involved in the voting, but I've got this story to tell, and if we plug person A into the role as leader, look what we can do over here. And I could see the debate with the editors being, you sit down with your editor and just say, we are talking about a story here that is an element here that is going to increase the value of the story for the same readership that we're talking about here. And that's something we need to think about. So I could see that debate happening, and I could totally see that being in the realm of possibility that it may have happened. I would think, because we got to look at sales.
Definitely.
As we examine the status of each Legionnaire, it kind of reminds me of Oracle's role in the DC Universe around the time of the Morrison JLA. She was kind of the go-to person for every hero on the team. When I'm talking about, like, Element Lad, what he was doing, she kept the whole thing interconnected and efficient, and he was doing that. He was looking at each of the small core groups that were out there and was linking what was happening between each of the core groups, gathering some background information from other people out in the field, and trying to connect the dots. And I'm not saying it's cookie cutter. It's the same thing as that, but it connected with me in that way because I'm like, this is, with a group this size, you really need a leader to be, or at least if it's not the leader, you need the leader to delegate somebody to be on the scene doing this. Because you got too many people off in too many different directions, and if you're not paying attention to what's going on, you could miss a very important detail, or you could also lose members of your team. Because you got two people over here and they're being overwhelmed. You need to be able to move another team into place to help them out, otherwise you're going to lose some people. And you certainly, with the political nature of this, do not want that to happen on your watch. So I totally was eating that up. It was very cool.
He's multitasking. It's nice.
Of course, he has no time to reflect when Tyr and the Legion of Supervillains show up to steal the polymer screen that protects the Earth for their other plan. And apparently it won't work out without the shield protection. That's where we begin to see they need this shield for some reason. And I was like, when I'm reading, I'm like, they need what now? And why? Okay, they've got fusion power spears. They're trying to take this. What are they doing here? An environmental shield around the Earth is something that, when we talk about pollution and global warming, it's still very relevant today. It's a great nod to the problems facing our world as we continue to slowly explore ways to conserve natural resources. Wouldn't it have been great, though, if we could have said, I mean, this is from 1984. Wouldn't it have been great if we said, this 1984 concept is out of date now because, really, as people, we've gotten our act together on a global scale? If anything, I want this shield now. It's a pretty sad starry state, because a lot of times when you read comic books or novels or things like that where, they've taken place this far back or even farther, there are concepts that at the time sounded real futuristic and real ahead of their time that become outdated or outmoded because of things that we know today. And this, unfortunately, is not one of them.
Well, like the flying cars by the year 2000 and, just the different, technology that they thought we'd have back in those old 50s sci-fi movies where they're talking the year 2000. They'll be on, exploration of those stars, colonies, and stuff like that. And we don't have any of that, but it's, this is, yeah.
Element Lad is outnumbered, so Lightning Lad joins into the battle. Saturn Girl sort of hangs in the background, but has a confrontation with Tyr. Realizing she is pregnant, I was kind of assuming that he would back off. No such luck, as he almost kills her because she has pains due to her pregnancy. She's going into labor. And I like that. Her powers are all mental-based. She's lost, she loses focus. She's a sitting duck.
Mm-hmm. A couple things. One, yes, she's a Legionnaire, and I do like the fact that she steps up, but come on. She should have known better. She shouldn't have gone in. She should have known she was a liability. And also, I would have liked to see them have someone else that could have gone in her place or something like that, just because...
Lightning Lad. They had that.
But I'm beyond this, more than just one person. I would have liked to seen them have... we later see them activate some recruits and some of the substitute heroes and stuff like that. I would have rather seen them already have activated the substitute heroes or had some extra bodyguards around her who she could have sent in or so. I don't know, just something.
But you got to remember, they didn't realize yet the scope and scale of what was going on, and that's where this worked for me. The only reason why she got into this battle was because they were in a satellite that was orbiting the planet. I have no doubt, like, they could have gone one or two ways with this story. They could have left her on the satellite, but what would eventually happen, Tyr and those guys would have come in there and gone after her. They made this blood pact. So it made more sense. Remember, Lightning Lad was trying to keep her in the background. Just stay back. Let me handle this. She only got involved because, and it showed who she is as a character, that nobody's going to tell Saturn Girl what to do. And that was the point, and they made that point regularly. They made it back later when she actually did give birth, that no matter what happened, no matter how many times they had put out, even if they had put out the exact people that you're talking about, she still would have gotten involved.
And here's the thing, I'm not complaining about what the story was written. This is more my getting into the comic, going, being her friend and being her buddy and pal, saying, don't go. I'm one of those people who I wanted to be assigned as her bodyguard, so she wouldn't have done that. That's where,
But we all have those infuriating friends that are going to do it anyway.
Right.
And that's who she is, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, and dude, we're agreeing. I'm just throwing out a different way.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want you guys thinking I was like, bad-mouthing the way the story is written, because I love that about this. But it's like,
you were doing a geeky debate. That's the whole point.
Now, speaking of geeky debates, there's something that's been bugging me since this dude was first introduced. Radiation Roy. The name it's something that should be like in Bob the Builder or those Rescue Heroes or something. It doesn't have that villainous name to it.
It depends on when he was created, though, because he may have been around. I'm guessing he was probably around a long time. I don't know, Matt. Do you know how long Radiation Roy? You don't have to give me exact origin date, but I mean, did he have a history prior to this? I'm guessing he did.
I believe he did. I think he is in the second Legion showcase.
Which I read the first one all the way through, and I know he isn't in that one, but I haven't. I've got my second one. I haven't read it yet. So,
I believe he's in there.
Okay, so we're putting him back in the Silver Age era.
Okay, that does kind of make some sense on the name, but it's still.
I guess I was assuming that.
Stuff like that is what does get me a little bit in. Just I don't know. It's.
But if you look back in that whole era, that was how they were naming the Legion. Mm-hmm. So it was very consistent with the way they were naming the heroes and villains of the era. That's why I said I naturally kind of when I asked Matt that question, one of the reasons, Matt, why I went to you with that was I was thinking, I'm like, this has got to be a hero, or a villain that was from way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Because it so sounds like that.
I know, and the only thing that holds me back from ordering my Legion flight ring are little stuff like that. It's like Radiation Roy and just.
But he's not in the Legion.
I know, but it's still. He's in the Legion universe, so it's I don't know.
So you're faulting them because of their villains?
Yes, but also even sometimes like some of the heroes where, oh god, it's like. How they always use lad, lass, boy, or girl in the name. It can't just be, like you have Nightwing, you have Robin, you have,
But
I was going to say Batman, but it has man in it, but still, it's...
They were trying to separate them, though, on a fundamental level from the present-day heroes at the time when they wrote them. And they were also trying to... Remember, when they first came on the scene, they were teenage friends of Superman. So they were trying to show that these were all younger heroes. Mm-hmm. Instead of Superman, we had, they were Superboy, there was Lightning Lad, there was Cosmic Boy and Saturn Girl. They were, that was kind of consistent with the era and how they were labeling. There was Supergirl. That was kind of what they were doing at the time, and just, it's more of a nod to the history. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I wouldn't be for them now all of a sudden changing Lightning Lad to, the Lightning Nader or anything like that. I don't want to see some new name for these characters now. Their history's too long and too rich. Radiation Roy, maybe you could name him something else, but
the Radiator.
Yeah, but actually, Tyr
calls him calls him the Radiator. Yeah,
right, which I really liked. So I don't know what I would. I don't know. Lightning Lad works.
People didn't kind of like the name changes when they changed them all for the post-Zero Hour series. Like Lightning Lad became Live Wire.
Okay. Well, see, I'm not a fan of that.
Right.
Now, did they change all of their names in the post?
They changed a bunch of them. If not all of them, but a good chunk of them.
So, I mean, like Jim, like Lightning Lad now, can you look at him and say Livewire? And be okay with that?
I actually probably could see. I could probably be okay with that. What was that one? Is that traded or? Because I'd like to read that where they have different names to see if I would enjoy it. Because
I'm not sure, but it's all the post 0 hour stuff.
Okay. We'll look at the look for some
we'll
of that
see if we can
stuff
find
at
it.
the because I'd actually like to read it myself anyway. The only thing is, see, and I do find myself, I become a traditionalist in the sense that he's Lightning Lad to me. I don't want him to have a new name.
and to be honest, maybe when I read him with a new name, I'll be like, it's not the same, but it's, I don't know, for some reason in my head, I think I'd rather call him Livewire. And I'd rather call, Colossal Boy Colossal or Shrinking Dude, whatever, I don't know, whatever, it's like something different than just lad, lass,
That Shrinking Dude.
I don't know, just because he had the one thing where he said he's not Colossal Boy, he's Shrinking Guy or Shrinking Boy or something like that, because he can go from giant to small. In one of the versions of I don't remember.
That's the Wade version. I don't know. Was that true with this? Was that true with his history in this Legion, Matt? I think in this one he was called Colossal Boy because he grew, right?
Right. He was just a regular guy who got growing powers.
Because we see his parents in this,
right?
And they're normal size, so it wasn't that they shrunk. They don't have. I don't think his parents don't have this power, do they?
No.
That was his people, and you're thinking of the current Legion.
Right, yeah.
So that's...
Remember, that's my Legion, dude, so...
Yeah. It was interesting when they did that, though, because I knew when they did that in the Wade run that was not accurate to the history of the character. At least I shouldn't say I knew it, I assumed it. I figured that was like a little twist on it. You are part of this goofy pact to kill one of the Legionnaires. Now, I wouldn't like to kill under any circumstance. It just isn't in my wiring. But if I found myself in a pact like this, I would want to get my part over ASAP. So I did identify with Tyr here. Because when he misses his opportunity with Saturn Girl, I got his frustration. When he was being pulled away, he was angry. Imagine you're left with Monel or Ultra Boy, if you've got this pact. You're like, I have a chance, I can kill Saturn Girl. I have bragging rights now, I kill the first Legionnaire. It's one of those things where, and I'm not wired that way, so I'm not saying this is something I'd want to do, but, it would be a feather in your cap at that point to have that done. Now, let's make our own pact here. You have to kill one character in the DC universe. Who would it be? Now, I'm not going to limit it to heroes or villains. It can be any character. Who is a character if you could kill one character in the DC universe? Or if you had to. Let me put it that way. Not that you'd want to. If you had to kill somebody, and you can't say you can't, who is the one that you would say, if I've got to go kill somebody, this is who I'm taking out?
Oh, that's easy. Hawkman. You walked into that one, dude.
I did. Deserve that one, of course. Do you have a real one?
That's a toughie. I don't know. I'm going to actually go with... that's a tough... hero or villain. See, villain side... There's a couple that I would like to, that I probably would say kill off. It's Flash Rogue, the Abracadabra.
Oh, yeah, Abracadabra.
Yeah, for some reason he just annoys me. I don't know what it is about him, but I'm just like, there's something like, dude, let's get rid of him. Or update him, make him a little bit more menacing, make him a little bit more of a butt kicker, because he just seems... Yeah, even when he was part of the people who killed off Bart, I still was like, I didn't like the guy. So, yeah, it's the villain side. That's what I say get rid of.
Because he's annoying.
Yeah, he annoys me. On the hero side, and this pains me to say this because I like the character, but I also think that's why his death would be some significant thing that would just ripple through the community, and it would be one of those things where like, oh, wow, I can't believe they killed him off, but Cyborg. He would just be something, because you think about how many people have worked with him, how many people have teamed up with him, how many people have just, his death would be something that would be just massively, massively felt throughout the DC universe. And it could be even one of those things where people are saying, wow, I didn't know how connected or how many good power friends that he had. And it would be something, I wouldn't want to see it happen because, as I said, I really like the character and I wish they would use him more, but he is somebody that if they did it to, it would be one of those wow moments.
I guess for me I have two, and they're both villains. Hush and Bane. Two villains that at one point in time I considered to be outstanding Batman villains. Bane has been, and I'm not saying that he can't be put back. They're starting to head back in the right direction with him, more of what I liked about him. But there was one point in time where, Nightfall, Bane took down Batman. I know he wasn't meant to be the main villain in Nightfall. If you Comic Geek Speak had an interview with Denny O'Neil, and the real villain was Azrael, and that was the way it was always meant to go. But that's set up with Bane, where he psychologically took him down and got to know him. I am glad to see in more recent issues that we've seen, in recent appearances, I should say, we've seen Bane identify Batman in one of his disguises, and I'll leave it at that. But it was great to see kind of that character coming back through again. So, but that's one that I'm kind of like, oh, we need to kind of correct him. So I might... Hush, though, I would definitely say, because I haven't seen any redemption for Hush yet. and I loved that miniseries. I'm almost talking myself out of Bane right now. But Hush I will stick with, because I loved what Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee did in the Hush miniseries. And I haven't liked him since. And that's a character who I'd like to see just kill him. Maybe do Hush Rebirth. And then bring him back again the way that he was. Because I did like the character. And I think that's kind of why I'm saying, axe him. Because, unless somebody's really going to get to the root of who he is. So I'll leave it at Hush. I'll take Bane out of the equation again, because I kind of talked myself out of it just because there was a recent storyline where I'm like, oh, well, they're starting to get it again. So I'm like, all right. Do you have anybody, Matt, that you have to pick one that you've got to... Who would you axe?
Metallo.
Oh. I'm not going to argue with that one either. Why Metallo?
I think he's just a one-note villain who's been played out. They kind of made him interesting in the Last Son story arc, but that's probably the only time I have ever found him entertaining.
Yeah, and I'm with you. That's a character who I think I could see them doing a revamp of him and making him interesting. Or like you said in Last Son, he became an intriguing character in there, and maybe if we start going more in that direction, that might be, there might be a way to kind of redeem that character as far as an interesting character. But you're right, he's
a little
very cheesy.
Though the one scene from Up and Away when Luthor rips the kryptonite out of his chest, that was a really cool scene.
Oh yeah, I was a big fan of that.
That was a nice little usage of him there. Granted, it was him having his power, heart, whatever you want to call it, ripped out of his chest, but still.
But it goes back to what Matt says. And actually validates it. Because I would have been fine if it ended there. Because it really was a cool Luthor moment, not a cool Metallo moment. Really slick villain moment with Terrace and Donnie, Wildfire and Mon-El. They're tracking villains, but booby traps have been placed along the way, including a meteor storm which threatens to destroy the ship containing the rest of the team. Wildfire kicks out of his suit to use his full awesomeness to destroy the meteor shower. And as a kid, I always liked Wildfire's powers because he just seemed very powerful. I love that he could fly. And he had this intense amount of energy about him. There was, he's a big energy character. I'm also a fan of his costume because it had that mirrored mask. Now, as a kid, anyone could be Wildfire, when you think about it. Who wouldn't want to pretend to be a Legionnaire? And who better than one where it wasn't a stretch to imagine your own face behind the mask? So, there is a rationalization behind this, but it was just cool stuff. I really respected Dawnstar in these moments. She's the team's tracker, and in spite of being hurt, she's giving 110%, knowing that these villains are out to kill her. And I like that. It's, the great thing about this team was it's balanced with strong male and strong female characters. There's not a domination, and really, that was a cutting-edge part of this series for me, right from the beginning. If you look back into the team's origins, they had very strong female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes events happen at the strangest times, and Saturn Girl's going into labor and having her child was one of those moments that fit into reality because a birth of a child is not going to happen to a schedule that is always perfectly convenient. And it was a nice comedy bit with the nervous dad and the Legion leader who is very stressed over the possibility that there could be complications on his watch. And it rang so true on so many levels. First, as a friend, you wouldn't want people to remember you as the leader if something happened to their child. Second, they are voted to be Legion leader. A baby dies on your watch, you're done. Politically, everyone's going to use that against you.
And there's no way you can recover from that one. There's no spin doctor out there that's good enough to put a positive twist on the little story there.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's more worried for the moral reason, but it's interesting that politics naturally entered into my head as I was thinking about this, which in a different story, in a different book, I would not have thought of it this way. And that's where I thought it was interesting that the Legion is something so different. Karate Kid and Projectra head back to her world of Arando. She is their queen, and as her husband, he's there to protect and support her. There's a nice reflection on their honeymoon, but once again, very short-lived as Mistmaster and Hunter and a figure of the Shadows, who is revealed later that he was once a Legionnaire, takes their ship down. The shadowy figure turns the ring and causes the alarm to bring the Legion running to a trap. Again, as we end this issue, I compliment the slow build. This drama is unfolding slowly, seeming that simple villains banding together to kill the heroes turns into something that's a little bit more epic, a little bit more large scale. And I liked how this really, we're starting into issue 3, and this really unfolded in a really cool way.
Okay, maybe I could get over Tom's bushy beard by saying that's the era. I can maybe get by that, but the double pigtails on Hunter really angered me. I was saying he looked like an evil version of Wendy, from the restaurants, coming after you. And every time I saw that, I'm like, dude, come on, the double pigtails. I could see one in the back, maybe shaved head, something funky hairstyle, double pigtail, dude. I'm like, how can you actually look at that guy and go, oh no, Wendy's gonna kill me? Come on.
I like that. He's the evil Wendy. I did not get that at all. I took him as he was a Viking dude. That was what they were going for with the whole thing. I totally didn't get that whole I don't know if I'll ever look at him the same now, but I did not have that problem with him at all. I just took him as, okay, they're going for the Viking vibe, and that was what I got from the whole thing. But wow. You ever watch Red Dwarf?
Yeah.
When Rimmer was dressed up as the girl with the
right.
Yes. I'm getting
that stuff out now. Yeah.
Issue 3 opens with the heroes speculating on Arando. Why are the villains there? Is it just 2 Legionnaires on the planet or something more? And I loved these questions that were coming out. Monel also points out that they are spread out, which does make them easy targets. And I was glad to see somebody acknowledging the fact that we are disorganized right now. We are all over the place, which normally probably for them to do things in squads is the right way to go about it. Divide and conquer, get more done. That's the advantage of having such a large group of heroes. In this case, it's working against them, and I liked it. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Phantom Girl seems to have caught on, and I do like the clashing of personalities as they debate. A group this size would have that. Timberwolf's good in a fight, but they aren't too convinced of his brain power, which he's the kind of the grunt of the team, and you kind of expect, he's the guy that you want watching your back because he's not going to quit, but you're not going to go to him for strategic advice always. Which I think it would depend on the situation, though. If I'm in a jungle, or if I'm in the middle of a major firefight, and I want to get out of it, I'm going to say, Timberwolf, what do we need to do? And we're following him.
Yeah, but only problem is, if you get a guy who's so, hoorah, hardcore fighting, he may in his head say, "We ain't running. We'll fight our way out. We'll take out all." Whereas a strategic type person will look and say, "No, we could either fight these 1,000 people here, or we could just walk down this alley right here and just get away. I'm going to go for the quick and easy exit. Timberwolf may not." So yes, he is a guy I would want in the fight, but I don't know really if I would follow him in a fight, because they're like, there's only 1,000 of them. We can take them.
we both play a game called City of Heroes, and it's one of those things. You get on teams with people, and the whole point is you want to be very careful, because everybody in the game has different power sets and some people are downright weak, but their job is to be support. They're supposed to be healers and things like that. Well, you always get the one guy who is, like we're talking about Timberwolf, where he's going to be gung-ho and rush on in. Well, the problem is, you'll take, at the end of when they do that, because then you'll all get attacked by, people popping out from all over the place because you didn't do a good strategy. Because the idea is, if you see, 20 villains in front of you, you want to pull smaller groups towards you versus running into the middle and having all of them attack you. So, you pick them off in small numbers. Well, when you get the goofball who goes and runs in and does that, you all get attacked and you all die. So that happens enough times, and you've told that person to stop doing that and they keep doing it. I can't tell you how many teams I've been on where we just let that person run in and everybody left the room. Doesn't really apply too much here, because you wouldn't do that with Timberwolf. It would kind of ruin the book. Did you see that issue of the Legion where everyone left Timberwolf behind? But it was kind of a funny, it made me connect to that game in particular. Things go from bad to work as this group, minus Dawnstar, is pulled into a portal by Zimir and Terrace. Orlando Wave 2 is being sent as Element Lad takes the Legion from Earth and heads back up to the first group. Cosmic Boy shows his experience by catching that there's going to be a trap here. Jan of the Science Police is having a little something with Element Lad. And I do like that the Legion branches out to different groups. In the series, we don't just see the Legionnaires. We see humans, we see menas, we see political figures, we see science police, and these are people who they gradually flesh out certain supporting cast from. That, again, those are those tiny little things. Well, in this case, it's a little bit more than that, having these characters that obviously some of these science police girls that they've shown are having relationships with Legionnaires, and I like that there's these characters that I'm convinced some of them probably have a much larger role in the Legion than I'm even realizing. And I like that it's not just limited to the heroes.
This scene is the one I was talking about earlier, where when he slaps the big old kiss on her, tells her, "When I get back, we'll have a long overdue talk," I'm thinking, he's dead. Right there. Put the red shirt on him. He's toast. And I'm like, so going into this, I'm thinking, that's it. We got the guy who dies. And so when we actually found out who actually dies, I was like, whoa, okay, cool. But yeah, it was just a really just cool moment where I was just like, wow, he's going to die.
Because I already knew, I wouldn't have painted the target on him. But it's funny when you explain it. I can totally see how you arrived at that conclusion. I might have as well if I didn't know. It's hard for me to speculate on that because I can't go back and pretend that I didn't know what happened there. But you're right. Typically when you have that romantic scene like that, and you've got a prophecy hanging over the book that somebody's dying.
It's usually when you have the big romance going, or you got the one person saying, when I get out of the war, I'm going back to Yancey Street and have a big old salami sub. Or you get those guys who are just thinking, when this is all over with, I'm going to go on and do this. Okay, that dude's dead. He's toast. It's...
I love that you connected a salami sub to a romantic moment.
Hey, for some people, food is their romance,
Speaking of the subs, they offer their support. Night Girl, who... And am I right here in assuming that she has a relationship now with Cosmic Boy, Matt?
I believe so.
Because it did read like that from the way he was kind of hinting. as he pulled Jan aside from the science police. He was kind of hinting that these relationships are hard, and I liked that. I liked the whole banter going on here because he was talking about how relationships with superheroes in the Legion of Superheroes can be hard because obviously they would be away from home a lot. Oftentimes it would be hard for the person, we see this type of thing with Peter Parker and Mary Jane, is he alive, is he dead, and that type of thing. I like that kind of feeling that, people die out there. And you know that the villains are not afraid to kill. And this kind of type of thing rounds the whole thing off for me. And I picked up the vibe that these two were having a relationship, and I liked how he took her aside and had that kind of emotional moment. Or on Orlando, Jackie and Karate Kid are hooked up to some machine that is either trapping or killing them. And what I liked about that was, and the reason why I'm kind of putting it this way now is, it was great that Lightning Lass, or, in this case, Light Lass?
Yep, Light Lass.
Light Lass at this point. I like that we saw this through her eyes. She didn't know what was going on, so we didn't. And why would she? We didn't have that typical ha-ha-ha villain moment where they explained their cunning plan with the machine. And I was glad that they didn't, gloss over the fact that she was oblivious to what was going on with the machine as well. Here is where Lightning Lord gets real creepy. He wants her to join him, but also tries to break her down with the news of the traps for the Legion. She remains defiant, but he wants her willing. Well, willing to let Esper Lass again mess with her head to fix her. And it was just when she refuses to obey him, we see him snap. And again, he needs his ego fed. And when it is not, it frustrates him. He unleashes his full power on her to the point where we see her physically red from the after effects. We see that kind of... I didn't take it that she was burnt, but I took it as there was a glow from the power still around her. I don't know how you guys read that.
That's kind of how I read it, too.
Yeah. It was, I figured maybe she was a little bit singed, but not, fried. I didn't think she was dead at all.
No, and I didn't take it as that way. I just meant that I didn't expect to see her with, burn marks all over her afterwards from this, just the way it was. This is going to backfire on him later. But these were totally solid moments that showed his twisted nature.
And I really got to say, I liked just the art look, the art of this scene, especially because you have Lightning Lord with that he's like a lengthy description on why she should join. She's like, no. It wasn't a long, it was... a lot of speaking on his part, but there's that bam, no, that determination, that solid, just one word, answer. It was really nice. Had she gone into some long soliloquy of why she won't I'll never join you, or it would have taken away from the moment of just her loyalty is who she is. I thought that was just a powerful, powerful scene.
What it also set up, too, with his constant dialogue there was his mindset, which I think was more important at that point. We knew she was defiant, and it was good because just saying no showed her strength. I totally agree with you on that. It actually told us a lot about her in a very simple little two-letter word. But in his case, you really needed to see that he was jumping all over the place in his rationalizations as far as why she should join, to the point where he was desperate to feed his ego. He was desperate for her to join, and he was going to appeal to her as the brother. He was going to appeal to her as the dominator. And it was, and then there were points where he just plain cracked. And I was great to see that, multiple shift in his behavior and his emotional reactions to just really show that he's not all upstairs. Dreamgirl and Starboy crash on a planet to be met by Hunter and Silver Slasher, two more members about to fall. And we see this interlude on Earth where Mr. Brand is upset that the Allens are stepping down, and he points out that this could be long-term trouble for the Legion politically. I liked these little bits. It was a one-page little bit. Again, I'm not real versed on the political history of the Legion and where it went because, I read this story so far. And like I said, I've got the first 25 issues of this run now that I got, and I am going to go on after this and read those over the summer because I really, really was into this. But it was fun for me to see that, I didn't read what came before except for Broken Issues. I haven't read what's come after this directly. It was nice to see, though, that, hey, this is a serialized story. There is not just this 5-part, 6-part story going on here. We've got more planned for you. There's going to be a lot more story going on here, and there's more than one thread that's going through here. They didn't overdo it. It was just a one-page thing, nice little dialogue, and then we moved on. So it was. I thought the pacing of that was really well done. They didn't go too far with it. This is where things really started to get good for me. Right after this particular segment, there were some fantastic art spreads as the Legion is pulled through the portal and are holding their own against the Legion of supervillains who ambushed them. They buy enough time for a second Earth wave to arrive. There's a ton of action on each page, and I found myself spending a great deal of time seeing who was fighting who, how one action interfered with another. It added to the sense of confusion of the battle with so many involved. You'd have to be careful that allies wouldn't get caught in the crossfire. And I liked that. It added some depth to me of this whole thing.
It just the whole, you're talking about just the craziness of battle. It's like just the multiple fronts, and you're like, bam, bam, bam. It was definitely one of those things where I read through it a couple times just to, you read through once where you read the story, but then you read through again just to absorb what is actually happening. Look at, just what's out there. This was one of those really cool art moments in this series. A lot of these battles coming up had that same type of nice team dynamics, flow. These were some really well-crafted, actual action-oriented behind the combat and whatnot.
There was no wasted space on the page. It was literally, even the stuff that was happening in the background, really it played in some way to the stuff that was going in the foreground. And
right.
I really liked the way everything just kind of wove in and out of each other. It was really clever art, and I really appreciated the sheer amount of detail of it. Back on Orlando, Nemesis Kid, Ron Carr, and Nutrax are setting up the real plan. The shield and the power spheres are being fitted on the planet. The overall goal is for power over everyone, and Nemesis Kid's taking steps to achieve that power. Taking out the Legion is secondary and only in place so he can, his plan can take fruit. He's really using this, it almost feels like he's doing this more as distraction because the intention is to teleport the planet. That's the passage that they're talking about.
I tell you, you gotta dig I've talked a couple times about why would villains set up in Gotham, because Batman's there. Why would they go to Metropolis with Superman? Why not go to like a city like Cleveland where they could literally rule the town without any interference? So I like seeing this villain took that whole story arc to another level. It's not just going to another city on Earth, because the Legion is Earth. You have to go out of their dimension, out of their realm of exploration, their realm of whatever you want to call it, to actually truly be free of them. And I thought that was a really cool just concept and idea.
Oh, yeah. There's nice trades-offs here between the space battle and the planet. And I did love the bit, and I kind of set up for this before, where Dawnstar tricked Lazon into taking down Titania. Like I said at the start, the sheer busy nature of the battle made perfect sense. I was at Gettysburg last summer, or it was actually 2 summers ago, and on the tour they mentioned that due to the sheer amount of smoke from the weapons, soldiers had to walk side by side to prevent from killing allies. If one person stepped out of the line, whether going forward or backwards, that was the difference between either them shooting an ally or getting shot themselves. And it works here because that sense of battle confusion was very prevalent. Not because of smoke or things like that, but because of numbers. You've got people in colorful costumes. Their costumes are, very different. People are flying to and fro in front of you. There's blasts flying left and right. And it would be very easy for somebody to attack an ally. And I liked that Dawnstar used that element in this battle. It added to me a sense of realism to the sheer scale of numbers that were involved in this battle. I do like how the Legion has stronger teamwork, because each was looking out for each other. The dialogue balloons worked for me as well. It added to the weight by the Legion of Supervillains were attacking them in small groups early on to prevent this kind of organization from them. So it was nice to see now, hey, the band's all together, and now they're kicked into hero mode. And they've done this before. They know each other well. Despite any of the bickering and differences that they have when you see them off of a fight, you see when they're on the battlefield, it's all business. Everyone's looking out for each other. They're seeing somebody who's maybe being attacked and they're warning them ahead of time, or they're trying to step in like Colossal Boy did for Brainiac 5. to take the load off of them, so that way they can maybe help out somebody else where their strengths lie. That was the kind of stuff, as I was watching the battle, I'm like, yeah, this is really neat. You want to start seeing a reason why the Legion of Supervillains wanted them in small groups, so they didn't wind up doing this kind of thing, and that so worked for me. It also added some nice balance, though, to me to see members of the Legion knocked out, like Timberwolf. He got knocked out, not because it was Timberwolf. I'm just saying in general, just to see that it wasn't just the supervillains that were being taken out. This is a real threat, and that their numbers were going down too.
Yeah, if you just have like the heroes sweep in and just slap everyone around silly, it's gonna. Okay, what's the real threat here? The fact that the villains can win throughout this whole story, you're in your mind, you're still thinking the villains can win this. And if the villains can win it, the heroes have to step up even farther. And it just adds to the compelling story. Now, granted, if I was a gambling man, I'd put money on the Legion to win because it is the Legion of Superheroes comic, but you never know what's the price of the victory going to be. And that's, once again, the whole realism of the comic that is just coming through. That is a really cool kind of enjoyment for me.
Matt, one of the things I was watching this battle, I was thinking to myself, and this is something as a Legion fan maybe you can kind of help me with. I was wondering, normally do we see them fight like in squads, like kind of we saw at the beginning of this? Because of the fact that usually they divide and conquer and they put them in small groups, so that way you see like one group doing this storyline, another group doing this storyline, and there's one group that may be building to the next arc while another group is in the big forefront battle. But then we see when these big epic stories come along, this is when we see the whole team get together like this? Or do we usually see this whole team grouping in most arcs?
I think it's more of the squad-based thing that you'd mentioned, that it's pretty rare to have everyone together, which is reserved for extreme emergencies like this situation.
That was kind of the cool thing, is I got that vibe from this, that when they were all broken off into groups, that was very normal for them to be doing that kind of thing. And it was so neat when we saw them together, though, that the fact that they probably mix up the squads, that these guys all know each other, so when they are in the larger group, they are very effective in a large group.
Now, do they have like a danger room or like a simulator or a kitchen, like the other teams do, where they can actually drill and practice and stuff like that, or is it just assumed that they're doing that?
I don't remember a specific training facility, but I think they just. I don't know. That's a good question.
They do a lot of that. I know just from the issues that I've read. People like Karate Kid, for example, they would tell off camera that Karate Kid trained so and so, and maybe they show a panel or two of that. But they would. I think they would do more of that versus, at least from the issues I've read. And I'm not by any stretch a Legion expert, but the issues I remember reading as a child. And then as I got older, the broken runs that I've read too, the only time I remember seeing it, and I'd love to, if anybody wants to correct that too, I don't remember there being any mention of that either. It always seemed like, there's what better training than the one that they get from just kind of, and the way the Legion got together. Although, I want to say back in those old showcases, they hinted at something like that in the old clubhouse. But we never saw it.
Okay.
Right.
Because I read that whole initial showcase volume, and I want to say, and I could be dead wrong on this, but I want to say in that initial showcase volume they hinted at something like that, but that was about all.
Oh, okay.
And I could be totally misreading that, but I can't recommend enough for people to, just as long as I mention them. I read volume 1 cover to cover. I could not put it down. The only reason why I haven't started Volume 2 is I'm still finishing up with trying to stay current with everything that's currently being published. I'm finishing up the last Fourth World Omnibus. I'm on Volume 4 right now. When that's done, I am definitely jumping to the second volume of the Legion Showcase, because that showcase really surprised me at how much I enjoyed it. And I think it is because of the fact, like we're mentioning here, so many of these characters, I didn't know who they are. There's still, ones that obviously came after my reading that I don't know who they are, and that was the nice thing about the trade. If you didn't pick this up on any level, and you're just listening to this episode to hear us chat about it, the trade in the back has, from the Who's Who pages, the Legion of Supervillains, the complete group, the 2-page spread. It also has the Legion of Superheroes, the 2-page spread. It has a nice bio on Karate Kid in the back. And it has all the covers from Tales of the Legion of Superheroes, which were the reprints of these issues, in there as well. So it is a nice little package for somebody who didn't read this. You get kind of everything that you would expect in a collection. All the covers that were available for this. That's nice. I like it. With a trade package, if I'm going to read something, give me everything. And it's not so hard to give me a few extra pages like that. And it really is a very nice trade collection if you've never read this story at all, to get kind of a little bit of everything. And especially when Matt was talking about earlier, I loved that. The sheer numbers of characters. I kept flipping to the back of the book and saying, who is this person again?
Yeah.
Just to get my head around them. As the battle continues, Nemesis Kid lets this continue in hopes that the members of the Legion will fall. But when it looks like the opposite's going to happen and time's running out, he and Zimmer pull the plug on the battle and pull everyone back. The Legion Trinity are not only discussing the current situation, but the future. There is a need for new blood in the Legion. Some of this is set out of frustration that things aren't going so smooth. Also, there's this sense of almost being a parent to the team. Like they're afraid to cut the cord. And that's kind of oversimplifying because it almost sounds like a negative connotation, and I really don't mean it that way. They want to be that support piece. They need to be that support piece, as much as I do think the team needs them. So I don't mean that in any way as a negative connotation. It's interesting, though, that I really felt that these three had a very different role in the team as far as how they were viewed. Almost like at this point, that because of their various personal life statuses, they felt like they were almost semi-retired.
It's funny, when I first read through this, I liked the inner dialogue of the Trinity and all that, and just how they're doing it, but something threw me off that later I was like, okay, I like that they did this. What it was while this whole discussion's going on between them, Saturn Girl is breastfeeding the baby. And not only is they show the kid there, they have little gurgle sounds that the kid is making. And at first it really threw me off, like, why do they have to have this in there? And then after read through, I was like, okay, this is more of that, that realism behind the story. This is also really helps put them in like a parent type light to the rest of the team. This is a family. They are a family. They've grown out of just being the kids who are fighting the bad guys. They're mature and adults about this. So it was one of those things where at first it upset me, and then I was like, okay, I see why they did it. That's kind of neat.
It also showed too that when a crisis kicks in, there is no off duty for a Legionnaire.
Right.
Which I really liked. That they had personal lives. She has to take care of her baby, but by the same token, her expertise, Lightning Lad's expertise, Cosmic Boy's expertise, even in an advisory capacity, would be essential. And fine, they were off duty for whatever their status quo is. I picked that the three of them had a very different status quo than the rest of the team. And I picked that Cosmic Boy's status quo was very different than Lightning Lads and Saturn Girls. And that's, to me, was, like I mentioned at the beginning, you don't need to spell everything out for me if you're doing good storytelling. I'll figure it out as I go along for how you present it. And they did that here. So it was, I was pretty clear that, am I 100% sure on what their status is? No. But the question is, do I really need to be? And would it have improved my story any to know that? No. It really wouldn't have. And that's what I liked about it, because I honestly think it would have hurt the story had they wasted panels spelling that out for me, because it just wasn't needed here. I caught it. Good enough. And that's... If anything, it intrigued me to follow it further, to find out more about their relationships versus... Like Matt said, when you said that... You jumped on the Legion at a certain point and you got so interested and intrigued by it, you started going and getting back issues. And then you kept following it all the way through. That, to me, is part of the joy of reading serialized storytelling in comics is, sometimes give me enough that I'm totally into this story. So I wasn't confused. I picked it up in your storytelling here. But
Right.
then there's enough there that says to me, hey, I'm going to back issue bins. And that's fun. That's what this is all about. When Dreamcrow tries to coordinate the field team due to Element Lad and some of the others being captured in the last portal, we see the personality conflicts with Wildfire. And, of course, all conversation stops when the planet disappears and the true plan is revealed. But was there... I know when Dream Girl was a Legion leader, there was obviously some conflict between people, where, especially how she became leader. Do you know anything about, was there a history with her and Wildfire, or was it just because of, I took it as either that there was a history there, or if it was just the intensity of the battle was causing him to snap? Matt, do you know anything about that, or is there...
I'm not sure of the specifics behind it, but I think just for some reason they've always butted heads.
Because I got that vibe right away. Like they're just because he seemed to jump all over her in a way that he didn't anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
In a very intense situation. So I took it to be more as that there was a personality thing. I saw the possibility of it maybe just being an intensity of being in battle, but it kind of seemed to be a little something more. They have 8 of the Legionnaires and can move an entire planet out of reach of the Legion. They plan to move a universe they can control, and it looks like they want to pick off the Legion in small groups, maybe? If this is where they're going from here. Egos take hold with Ron Carr and Nemesis Kid. Ron gives him a compliment on being the greatest leader they could have hoped for. Nemesis punches him, though, because he is their only leader. And this really worked for me in the sense that he was talking before about being an emperor. And that mentality of establish from the beginning your authority. No chance, no thought of there being any possibility of a replacement. Otherwise, with this lot, you're going to have one ready to step up and take your place. And even doing things like this isn't going to be enough to deter it, but you're going to want to make sure you're constantly on your toes with this type of group. And I did like that way of kind of closing off this particular issue. As I mentioned at the start of the show, our next part of this episode will be released on Thursday night, where we will continue issues 4 through 6 of Legion of the Superheroes, An Eye for an Eye. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in a few days.
Bye.